For as long as stories have been told, one tale rises again and again across every culture, every land, every time. The tale of a great flood. In Mesopotamia, carved into cuneiform tablets older than the Bible, we find the Epic of Gilgamesh, describing a deluge sent by the gods to cleanse humanity. In the Hebrew scriptures, Noah is warned of a flood that would cover the earth, saving only those who prepared an ark. Across the world in India, Hindu texts tell of Manu, rescued by a divine fish from rising waters. The Aztecs in Mesoamerica spoke of the world being destroyed by floods before the current age of humanity began. In Australia, Aboriginal stories describe rising seas that swallowed ancient coastlines, remembered in oral traditions going back thousands of years. How can it be that from such distant corners of the earth, cultures with no known contact all remember the same event? To the modern scholar, myths are often dismissed as allegories, symbolic stories meant to explain morality or the power of the divine. But what if they are not merely stories? What if they are memories, cultural memories, of a real and devastating event? Archaeology has long told us that history begins around 5,000 years ago, with the first great cities in Sumer and Egypt. Yet these flood myths point to something deeper, something older, something humanity carried with it from a forgotten age. And when science steps into the debate, the question becomes unavoidable. Did a great cataclysm, perhaps a global flood, truly reset human history? The flood story of Gilgamesh is among the oldest we possess. Written nearly 4,000 years ago, it tells of Utnapishtim, a man chosen by the gods to survive a deluge by building a vast boat. He is warned, tear down your house, build a ship, abandon wealth, seek life, take up seed of all living things. Does this sound familiar? It is, of course, the story of Noah as well, yet written more than 1,000 years earlier. Was the Bible borrowing from Mesopotamian myth? Or was Mesopotamia itself retelling a memory older still? In India's Shatapatha, Brahmina, Manu is warned by a talking fish of a flood that will destroy humanity. The fish guides Manu's boat to safety, tied to a mountaintop until the waters recede. In the Popol Vuh of the Maya, we find a tale of a flood sent by the gods to wipe away a failed creation of humanity, wooden people before the dawn of the present age. In Norse mythology, the frost giants are drowned in a deluge of blood from the slain Ymir, a primal being. The world is remade, washed clean, life starting anew. The Polynesians, far across the Pacific, tell of great waves that once swept their islands, forcing their ancestors to seek refuge on mountain peaks. Even in North America, tribes such as the Hopi and the Cree speak of a flood that destroyed a previous world, after which survivors emerged from underground caves to repopulate the earth. Different names, different gods, but the same story. If this were one isolated tale, it could be dismissed as coincidence, a mere story. But when hundreds of cultures recall the same destruction, we must ask, what event could leave such a deep scar upon humanity's memory? Could there have been a global cataclysm, a flood so devastating that survivors encoded it in myth, passing it down for millennia? During the last ice age, enormous glaciers covered much of the northern hemisphere. Vast amounts of water were locked in ice. Around 12,000 years ago, the world began to warm. Glaciers melted, sea levels rose more than 400 feet, entire coastlines vanished. If human civilizations lived near the sea, as nearly all great cultures do, today their cities would have been swallowed whole, their ruins buried beneath the waves. Science confirms that sea levels rose dramatically at the end of the Ice Age. Yet, Could this be the Great Flood remembered by our ancestors? Some scholars argue yes. Others point to even more sudden events, violent cataclysms capable of unleashing floods in days, not centuries. But even without such catastrophes, the melting world alone would have been enough to terrify ancient people. Imagine living on a shoreline, watching the sea creep inland year by year, swallowing villages, forests, and fertile fields. For those who survived, how else to explain such destruction but by the will of the gods? One of the most striking aspects of these myths is their universality. Anthropologists estimate that over 500 distinct flood legends have been recorded across the globe. Even isolated island tribes, without knowledge of the Bible or Mesopotamia, remember stories of great waters rising, destroying and cleansing the earth. This suggests we are not simply dealing with coincidence or cultural borrowing. We are dealing with shared memory, shared trauma. Today, science and myth seem at odds, but when the two align, we may glimpse a hidden truth. Perhaps humanity truly did survive a great flood. Perhaps this was the event that erased earlier civilizations, forcing our species to begin again from the ashes. A reset of history. 12,800 years ago, the world changed. The Ice Age was ending. Temperatures were rising. Forests were expanding. Humanity was thriving. And then, suddenly it stopped. In an instant of geological time, the warming reversed. The Earth was plunged back into a mini ice age that lasted more than 1,000 years. This period is known as the Younger Dryas, and to this day, its cause remains one of the greatest mysteries in science. The Younger Dryas was catastrophic. Giant mammals, mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats vanished almost overnight. Human cultures collapsed. In North America, the Clovis people, once thought to be the first Americans, disappeared from the archaeological record. Across the globe, plant life shriveled, rivers dried, and ice advanced once more. Something had triggered a planetary shock. But what? For decades, scientists argued over explanations. Some suggested massive meltwater floods disrupted ocean currents. Others believed volcanic eruptions filled the sky with ash. But in recent years, a bold new theory has emerged, that Earth was struck by fragments of a massive comet or asteroid, unleashing fire, floods, and darkness. This is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. In 2007, a team of researchers proposed that evidence of an ancient impact event could be found across the globe. They pointed to a mysterious black layer, known as the Younger Dryas boundary, found in soils, from North America to Europe to the Middle East. Within this layer, they discovered nanodiamonds, tiny diamonds formed under intense heat and pressure, the kind that only a cosmic explosion could create. They found magnetic spherules, glass-like particles that form when rock is vaporized by extreme temperatures. They found elevated levels of platinum, rare on Earth but common in meteorites, all pointing to a devastating cosmic encounter. The hypothesis suggests that a giant comet, perhaps several kilometers across, broke apart as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Some fragments exploded in the sky with the force of thousands of nuclear bombs, igniting wildfires across continents. Others slammed into ice sheets that covered much of North America and Europe, releasing torrents of meltwater that surged into the oceans, disrupting global climate. The result, instant devastation, followed by 1,000 years of cold and chaos. Skeptics have resisted this theory, pointing to gaps in the evidence. Yet year after year, more discoveries appear. In Greenland, scientists found a massive crater beneath the ice, more than 30 kilometers wide. In South Carolina, sediments revealed microscopic particles linked to extraterrestrial impacts. Across 4 continents, the same black layer tells the same story. Something extraordinary happened at the dawn of civilization. And if true, it would mean humanity's history was not a slow, steady rise, but a cycle of destruction and rebirth. But the evidence does not end with science. Myths and legends from this period echo the memory of fire from the sky. The Zoroastrian texts of Persia speak of a star that fell to earth, unleashing destruction. Native American tribes recall fiery serpents descending from the heavens, setting forests ablaze. In the Bible, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is described in language eerily similar to an airburst explosion. Are these merely stories, or fragmented memories of a catastrophe that shaped our world? The Younger Dryas did more than just kill mammoths. It may have erased entire human cultures. Before the cataclysm, hunter-gatherer groups were thriving. After, many vanished. And in the ruins of this lost age, something remarkable happened. Human beings began to build. In Turkey, the site of Göbekli Tepe rises as a puzzle to archaeologists, dating back nearly 12,000 years. It is the world's oldest known temple, built with massive stone pillars carved with animals and symbols. Why did humans, previously nomadic, suddenly begin constructing monumental architecture? Could it be that survivors of the Younger Dryas were rebuilding, preserving knowledge, restarting civilization after disaster? If this theory is correct, then the Younger Dryas was not just a climatic event, it was a civilizational reset. Myths of floods, fire, and lost worlds are not just allegory, they are memory. Memory of a time when humanity stood on the edge of extinction and survived. But not without loss. Entire cultures, perhaps even advanced civilizations, may have been erased, leaving only fragments for us to rediscover. Today, the Younger Dryas remains controversial. Mainstream science debates the evidence. Archaeologists argue over interpretation. Yet the possibility remains that humanity has forgotten an entire chapter of its own story. A chapter of fire, flood, and near annihilation. And if such destruction happened once, could it happen again? When we think of lost civilizations, we often imagine Atlantis, a fabled city swallowed by the sea. But what if Atlantis is not merely a legend? What if the memory of lost cities is rooted in reality? At the end of the last ice age, as glaciers melted and sea levels rose by more than 400 feet, entire coastlines disappeared, and with them, countless settlements, villages, towns, even great cities, now lie hidden beneath the waves. Consider this. More than 70% of Earth's population today lives near coastlines. If the seas were to rise even a fraction of what they did 12,000 years ago, billions would be displaced. Now imagine ancient peoples, their cities, temples, and monuments built along the fertile edges of Ice Age seas. When the waters rose, those civilizations would vanish. Their ruins now lie drowned, beyond easy reach, beneath hundreds of feet of ocean. All around the world, divers and researchers have uncovered evidence of these forgotten places. Off the coast of India lies Dwarka, a legendary city said to have been founded by the god Krishna. Long dismissed as myth, Dwarka was rediscovered beneath the waters of the Gulf of Cambay. Archaeologists have found structures, streets, and walls stretching for miles. Some dated to nearly 9,000 years ago, older than the pyramids of Egypt. Could this be the true city of myth, swallowed by rising seas after the last ice age? Far to the east, near Japan's Yonaguni Island, another mystery rests beneath the waves. In 1986, divers discovered a massive stepped pyramid, carved terraces, and platforms beneath the ocean. Some argue it is a natural formation, sculpted by erosion, but others point to sharp right angles, staircases, and carvings that suggest intentional design. If Yonaguni is artificial, it would date back at least 10,000 years, rewriting everything we know about the rise of civilization. The mysteries do not end there. In the Caribbean, sonar surveys off the coast of Cuba have revealed vast underwater structures, arranged in grid-like patterns resembling streets and buildings. Some lie at depths of more than 2,000 feet, suggesting they sank long before any known civilization existed. Mainstream archaeology hesitates to accept these findings, but the evidence lingers, whispering of forgotten cities now buried in the abyss. Closer to home, in the Mediterranean Sea, divers have uncovered submerged ruins off the coast of Greece and Egypt. The city of Heracleion, once a bustling port near the Nile Delta, was lost for centuries beneath the waves, remembered only in legend. Today, its temples and colossal statues rest silently underwater. Pavlopetri, off the coast of Greece, is one of the world's oldest known sunken cities. Dating back more than 5,000 years, streets, courtyards, and tombs remain preserved beneath the sea. These discoveries remind us that the ocean floor is not empty. It is a graveyard of civilizations. And yet, these are only the cities we have found. More than 90% of the ocean floor remains unexplored. Imagine what still lies hidden, entire cultures erased by water, waiting to be rediscovered. Could the story of Atlantis, described by Plato as an advanced civilization that vanished beneath the waves, be more than a parable? Plato wrote of a mighty empire that sank in a single day and night of misfortune. While historians debate the details, many researchers believe Plato was preserving a memory of a real catastrophe. Perhaps Atlantis was not one place, but many, a memory of cities lost during the great floods at the end of the Ice Age. The ocean is both a destroyer and a preserver. Though waves swallowed these cities, the water also sealed them, protecting ruins from the erosion of time. One day, advanced exploration, perhaps with underwater drones, submersibles, or satellite scanning, may reveal whole forgotten civilizations on the continental shelves. If discovered, they would force us to rewrite history and accept that humanity has risen, fallen, and risen again, each time forgetting the age that came before. The myths of floods may not be just allegory. They may be history. The Younger Dryas may have brought the fire. The melting ice age may have brought the waters. And what lies beneath our oceans may hold the missing chapters of human civilization. But if survivors endured, what knowledge did they carry? And how did they rebuild from the ashes of cataclysm? If the world truly endured cataclysm at the end of the Ice Age, if fire, flood, and chaos erased entire cultures, then one question remains: who survived? Across the globe, myths and legends tell of survivors, chosen ones, wandering teachers, mysterious figures who emerged after the flood to guide humanity. They brought agriculture, architecture, astronomy, and law. Were these simply gods of mythology, or were they the last bearers of forgotten knowledge, survivors of an earlier, advanced age? In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians spoke of the Apkallu, semi-divine sages who emerged after the flood to teach writing, agriculture, and civilization. In Egypt, Osiris was said to have brought laws, farming, and order to a land devastated by chaos. In the Andes, Dwarka was remembered as a bearded god who rose from Lake Titicaca after a great flood, teaching humanity arts and sciences. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was described as a teacher of knowledge, a bringer of maize, who vanished across the sea with the promise to return. Everywhere, the same pattern emerges, a cataclysm, followed by teachers. But we do not need to rely only on legend. Archaeology gives us clues. Around 11,600 years ago, just after the Younger Dryas ended, humanity began building in ways never seen before. The most astonishing example lies in southern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. Here, massive stone pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons, were arranged in circles, carved with animals and abstract symbols. These structures predate Stonehenge by 6,000 years, and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000. Yet they were built not by farmers, but by How did nomadic people suddenly create monumental architecture? Without agriculture, without writing, without apparent hierarchy. Was this a spontaneous leap, or the influence of knowledge passed down by survivors? The site's age is striking. 11,600 years ago, the same date Plato gave for the destruction of Atlantis. A coincidence, or a connection? Some researchers suggest Göbekli Tepe was built as a response to Cataclysm, a temple to honor lost knowledge, or a gathering place to remember a vanished age. Others argue it was a center for astronomy, tracking the stars, perhaps even warning of cycles of destruction. Whatever its purpose, Göbekli Tepe suggests that survivors of catastrophe carried with them memories of how to build, carve, and organize. They lit the spark of civilization anew. Soon after Göbekli Tepe's construction, another revolution unfolded. Agriculture. In the Fertile Crescent, humans began cultivating wheat and barley, domesticating animals, and forming permanent settlements. Archaeologists call this the Neolithic Revolution, the foundation of civilization. But why here, and why so suddenly, after nearly 2 million years of hunting and gathering? Could it be that survivors of the cataclysm carried seeds, both literal and metaphorical, passing them to the next age? Myths often describe the gods as bringers of grain, teachers of farming. Perhaps they were remembering the very real people who taught agriculture after the flood. The survivors did more than farm. They built megaliths, vast stone monuments whose purpose remains shrouded in mystery. In Malta, gigantic temples of stone, aligned with the solstices, date back over 5,000 years. In South America, at sites like Punku in Bolivia, enormous stones weighing hundreds of tons were carved with precision that still baffles engineers today. In Britain, Stonehenge rose as both a calendar and a temple, aligned with the heavens. Everywhere, in the centuries after catastrophe, humans lifted stones as though to anchor their survival in permanence. Were these simply temples of worship or coded messages, attempts to preserve knowledge for future generations? If myths speak of survivors, teachers, sages, gods, then megaliths may be their monuments, perhaps built not to glorify but to warn, to remind us of cycles of destruction, to anchor in stone the memory of a world erased. For cultures across the world remembered more than just survival. They remembered fear. The Aztecs spoke of multiple suns, each ending in destruction, floods, fire, wind. The Hindus described Uga's vast ages of rise and fall, each closing in catastrophe. Even the Bible hints at cycles, with prophecy of fiery ends and new beginnings. Survivors may have carried not only knowledge, but warnings. After the flood, after the fire, after the cataclysm, humanity rebuilt. Myths call them gods. Archaeology calls them innovators. But whoever they were, the survivors of the last reset carried humanity across the threshold from chaos to civilization. Yet their warnings echo across time. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and memory is fragile. What happens when the survivor's message is ignored? And what knowledge, forbidden or forgotten, still lies hidden, buried by the sands of history? If humanity has lived through cycles of destruction, if myths preserve the memory of fire and flood, if ruins beneath the sea whisper of lost civilizations, then why are these ideas resisted so fiercely? Why does mainstream history insist that civilization began only 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt? The answer may lie not only in evidence, but in authority. For history is more than memory, it is power. Archaeology was born in the 19th century, shaped by rigid frameworks. Humanity advanced slowly, step by step, from primitive hunter-gatherers to farmers, to kings, to empires. Evidence that contradicted this neat timeline was often dismissed, ridiculed, or even suppressed. Consider the case of the Baghdad battery, an artifact resembling a primitive electrical device discovered in Iraq and dated to more than 2,000 years ago. Mainstream scholars label it a curiosity, nothing more. Or the Antikythera mechanism found in a Greek shipwreck, a complex clockwork computer more advanced than anything known until the Middle Ages. For decades, it was ignored because it did not fit the accepted story. These anomalies are often called UPARTs, out-of-place artifacts. From advanced metalwork in prehistoric layers, to ancient maps depicting Antarctica without ice, to enormous stone blocks shaped with technology we cannot replicate today. Each discovery whispers of knowledge lost, forbidden by the walls of accepted history. But the greatest resistance comes when these anomalies are linked together, suggesting that a forgotten chapter of civilization may have existed before the flood. For to admit this possibility is to admit that our history books are incomplete, and that humanity is far older and far more cyclical than we believe. Why would such knowledge be resisted? Partly, it is human pride. To believe we are the first and greatest civilization feeds our sense of progress, our narrative of superiority. But if history is cyclical, if greater civilizations have risen and fallen before us, then our own permanence is an illusion. Archaeologists defend tradition, institutions guard authority, and so alternative voices are silenced, labeled pseudoscience, conspiracy, fringe. Yet outside the halls of academia, millions hunger for a deeper truth. A truth that explains the mysteries textbooks cannot. Among the most forbidden ideas is the possibility of Atlantis. Plato's tale of a mighty civilization destroyed 11,600 years ago has been dismissed as allegory. Yet the date matches the end of the Younger Dryas, a time of fire and flood. Some researchers suggest Atlantis was real, perhaps in the Mediterranean, perhaps the Caribbean, perhaps a memory of many lost cities swallowed by the sea. Others go further, suggesting Antarctica itself hides ruins beneath the ice, remnants of a polar civilization. Mainstream science laughs, but why do these ideas persist? Perhaps because myths endure where memory fails. Forbidden history is not just about artifacts. It is about knowledge. Ancient texts, like the Vedas of India, describe advanced concepts of astronomy, time cycles, even flying machines, vimanas. The Egyptians encoded geometry and cosmic alignments into their pyramids. Mayan calendars tracked planetary movements with astonishing precision. Mainstream archaeology calls this coincidence or slow accumulation of knowledge. But what if these were fragments of a once unified science, carried through the chaos of cataclysm? To question the official timeline is to step into dangerous territory. Careers are ruined, discoveries are buried. Yet the forbidden always returns. The questions will not be silenced. Why do myths of floods appear everywhere? Why do ruins exist where no civilization was supposed to? Why do anomalies continue to surface, pointing to lost ages of knowledge? Perhaps the answer is simple, because history is not linear, it is cyclical. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and what we call progress may only be rediscovery. If history is cyclical, then what happened before can happen again. Fire, flood, catastrophe. We are not the first. We may not be the last. And so we must ask, have we truly learned the lessons of the survivors? Or are we doomed to repeat their fate? We began with myths. Stories told by cultures, oceans apart, separated by continents and centuries, yet united by the memory of flood, fire, and destruction. We followed the trail of science, the Younger Dryas, a time of sudden catastrophe that plunged the world into chaos. We dived beneath the oceans, where ruins sleep, drowned by rising seas. We walked among megaliths and temples, where survivors carved in stone the knowledge of ages. And we dared to ask why such truths are resisted, why the past, when it does not fit our story, is dismissed as myth or pseudo-history. But when myth, science, and archaeology converge, we glimpse something profound. Humanity is older, more fragile, and more resilient than we have been taught. And our story is not a straight line of progress, it is a cycle. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall. Once mammoths walked the earth. Once oceans were hundreds of feet lower. Once cities stood where waves now roll. And once survivors rebuilt from ruins, carrying seeds, stories, and stone. They passed on what little they could. Myths of gods, warnings of cycles, temples aligned with the stars. But much was lost. Perhaps entire sciences, technologies, or philosophies gone forever, erased by water and time. We are their descendants. We are the inheritors of fragments. And so the question turns to us. If history resets, could it happen again? Around us today, we see echoes of the same forces that shaped the past. Climate change, rising seas, shifting weather, threats from the sky, asteroids tracked daily by astronomers, near misses passing closer than the moon, and a fragile civilization more advanced than ever, yet utterly dependent on technology and systems that could crumble overnight. What would remain of us if disaster struck tomorrow? What ruins would we leave? What myths would our descendants tell? Would they call us gods or fools? The ancients may have tried to warn us. Through myth, through stone, through cycles of time, they whispered, remember. Remember that what has happened before can happen again. Remember that civilizations are fragile. Remember that survival depends not on pride, but on humility and on learning from the past. Perhaps the greatest lesson of ancient cataclysms is not despair, but resilience. Against fire and flood, humanity endured. From scattered survivors came farmers, builders, storytellers, and dreamers. They rebuilt, and in their rebuilding, they gave us the world we know today. If they endured, so can we. But only if we remember, only if we honor the warnings written in myth and stone, only if we accept that we are not the first, and will not be the last. The story of ancient cataclysms is the story of us, a story of memory and forgetting, a story of loss and rebirth, a story written in myths, carved in stone, drowned beneath the seas. We are a civilization with amnesia, struggling to remember what was lost, piecing together fragments of a forgotten past. But if we listen to the whispers of the ancients, if we heed their warnings, perhaps we may break the cycle. Or perhaps, one day, we too will be remembered only in myths, the legends of a lost world reset by history.